So as we mentioned before, eyes are not separated from the eyebrows itself when it comes to animate this particular part of the body or the face, which is the mask. It's let's say the relationship that there is in between them is very obvious because this part of the skin that is always happening under the brows. When we move the brows, usually it drags the eyelashes, and we can say the opposite too. Anyways, what is the relationship between eyebrows and eyelashes or eyes in general? You can always, or you should always find what is the fine line in between that relationship, when you should start moving the eyelashes when working on eyebrows. That is something that you can find in this example. For example, because it's a very extreme show, eyebrows are a little bit more separated to the eyelashes. As you can see, there is a few movements here of eyebrows that are not affecting almost nothing to the eyelashes, but there is a moment where they start to drag, right? These are starting to pull the eyebrows or the eyelashes and push the open to get open, right? Still, if we look at it in play, it works pretty good. So you can feel it still. If you look at this area, you can feel it still, that sense of unity, right? In this example that we were talking before, the interconnection is a little bit more clear. There is like all the movements basically that are happening in between eyebrows and the eyelashes are not that separated. Only if we look at them frame by frame is how we can find that delay, because there is always a little delay in between eyelashes and eyebrows. But when we see it in play, we can see that that interconnection is happening there, right? That being said, in the eye, usually the shape that we get in the eye or how we see the white of this eye, generally speaking, is because of two main controls. Usually one is just the general eyelashes. This is going to create like lots of expressivity and shapes in how the eye is looking. But also we have, generally in most of all the rigs or all the cartoony rigs, the main eye control, which is the one that controls which is the eyeball and the whole eyelids and all the outer shape of the eye. So this is like a big one that we can even scale up and create like a squash and a stretch, rotate to. We should always try to keep or to change the shape of the eyelids or the white of the eyes as much as we can with the eyelids, and only use this guy for very specific occasions, just for posing if it's necessary, maybe for a squash and a stretch. But don't abuse too much of using this much. That's not true. Use it as much as you want. Just to you just have to be mindful. And this one, just be mindful of how much it changes and alters the way the character looks. We always have to, because we are talking about the mask, so we always have to keep the impression that there is a sense of structure in this part of the face, right? So however we use the controls of the rig or all these controls here, we have to give the impression of keeping this structure. So always keeping this together, working together, is very important. As you can see, more or less, the eyes and the eyebrows are doing kind of like a similar pose, more or less. They are not just also pointing towards the screen left in the same angle. As you can see, more or less, this line is a little bit kind of copying of what this one is doing, and this line is also kind of copying of what this line is doing, right? So this is how we use sometimes these big controls here. One of the things that we can do is to find a symmetry. We use these two controls to find a difference in between these two eyes, because asymmetry sometimes is good, just a tiny little bit. We don't really want to overdo it too much, as that's not my recommendation. but some certain amount of difference between one eye and the other is pretty cool. Like for example, in this one, as you can see, the pose is actually the same. It looks pretty much the same, but what I did was to scale this one up in this direction, right? So we have the sense that this is a little bit more squashed than this one that is more stretched. So that's basically done with this two, and the pose is basically almost the same. But it creates this very nice feeling or sense of a difference between one of them. Still, it keeps the structure, right? We can see how eyebrows and the eyes are all, both of them working together in one shape. The other thing that we can do, for example, is by keeping, for example, by keeping this eye bigger than this one, and by shaping the eyelash in this position, what we are doing is that we are creating a little bit of difference on where the character is looking, right? We are giving or favoring this part of the screen because this is where the character is looking. So this is a good way also to do that. Other thing that can help us is to create a little bit of perspective. This eye here is a tiny little bit more small than this one. So we are, let's say, cheating a little bit, creating a perspective, bringing this eye, or by doing this eye a little bigger, we're giving the impression that this eye is a little bit closer to camera. This, from this perspective, is a little bit easier, but probably if I push it a little more, it's not gonna hurt us. Right? So you can still see how. So you can still see how even that I'm bringing this smaller, we're creating that kind of very nice feeling of perspective, right? Because this one is bigger than this other one. Anyways, whatever the pose that you choose, or how you choose it, or how you do it, which is very important, is cleanliness. I talked to you about that trick of thinking about pencil strokes with the eyebrows, or with in general with actually all the parts of the face. It's a good trick to do overall if you are working on a stylized kind of show, to imagine that the line of the eyebrows and the on the eyelashes and the mouth are kind of like pretending to be like kind of like pencil kind of strokes, but with eyelashes and with eyelids is when I probably do that most. So I try to always keep it very clean, very simple, right? This one, for example, is clearly like a kind of like a line. And we are also creating that kind of interconnection between those two eyelashes too. That's also a very nice trick. So simplicity on the eyelashes or the eye lines, or the eyelids, and interconnection in between them.